Okay, the time is 4:59. And I would like to call this meeting to order. I would like to stand for a motion to reconvene the board meeting.
So moved, Mr. President.
I have a motion by Mr. Dave Vickers to reconvene the motion. I'll stand for a second.
Second.
A second by Mr. Stephen Otero. Mr. Dave Vickers, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Frank Otero, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Otero, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Eloy Hiron, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Before we begin, I'd like to announce that the board members are participating via Zoom meeting. I'd like to welcome those who are participating via Zoom and those watching the board meeting via live streaming. The link to the meeting is on the district webpage under the Board of Education. The streaming will run through the end of the meeting. When the board is on break or in closed executive session, the screen will fade to black and the sound will be muted. In the event there is disruption in the audio portion, I will pause the meeting until it's reestablished. We have board members Eloy Hiron participating via Zoom, Mr. Frank Otero participating via Zoom, Mr. Dave Vickers participating via Zoom, Mr. Stephen Otero participating via Zoom. Mr. Gibson as well is participating via Zoom. Pursuant to the New Mexico Open Meetings Act 10-15-1E NMSA, and as announced and posted, the Las Unas Schools Board of Education's regular meeting last night, July 21st, 2020, was recessed at 7:40 p.m. We apologize for the delay in the meeting and thank everybody for joining us again. As a note, only the items listed on the original agenda will be discussed at this reconvened meeting. We will begin back in item number 9. I believe there were a couple of comments that I guess Mr. Stephen Otero had the floor and I did not give all the board members a chance to make comments on this. So we will go back to item number 9, and I believe I left off with Mr. Stephen Otero.
Thank you very much. First, I'd like to say it's a blessing when things happen, such as our meeting being rescheduled for today or continue today, because I've gotten so many emails from various staff members, parents, people that are concerned that were part of the 300 people that attended the meeting last night. And there's a lot of concerns, a lot of questions that are going on right now, I guess based on the discussion of our meeting. I think it's been said that the decision hasn't been made. It's only recommended at this point in time. And I think the decision or the action item will be taken on our meeting, I think next Thursday. Is that correct, Mr. President?
That will be at the meeting tomorrow. Yes, correct.
Oh, is it tomorrow? I thought it was next
tomorrow.
Excellent, good. So I asked a question yesterday about how are we going to keep our secretaries safe? How are we going to keep our bus drivers safe? We've been assured that we're going to have not only the masks, but the shields for those that are going to be in constant contact with staff, parents, or anybody else that would be coming for a hybrid situation. Then I got questions, well, how about our teachers? You know, how's that going to work with our teachers also being safe? So I'm going to go through a lot of questions and then maybe Mr. Gibson can summarize the answers. The other thing that was asked is, do we have protocol? And I know I asked this last night, Mr. Gibson, in reference to taking temperatures of those that are coming to our school. My thought was that the first exposure they have to their day in school should be the place they take their temperature, such as the bus drivers, if they're riding the bus. Those that are being brought by parents, then they, of course, would be at the office. I think that if a child is exposed to COVID and gets on the bus and doesn't get tested till they get to the school, then they expose those that were in the bus, including the bus driver. Another thing that was brought up last night was, and I think Mr. Hiron asked that of Ms. Jaramillo, what do they have in place in case somebody does get infected or comes with the COVID to the school? She said that they were going to be isolated to a room and so on and so forth. I think the concern is that you hear it in the news all the time, every day, that they shut down a school, Trisco Heritage shut down their school because one came. So I think that would apply to the Los Angeles School District as well, not just one school. So I would think that if a child came or a parent or even a staff member that had the COVID, that we would end up having to shut down that school. Am I correct on that one? Mr. Gibson?
Under current guidance, that is not the case. Under current guidance, we would isolate the student, notify the parents, or if it was a staff member, a significant other, to come pick that person up. We would contact trace where that student had been in contact that day. And we would follow the guidelines from the Department of Health and CDC. Those guidelines do not at this point in time say to evacuate the school. They say to isolate the person that has symptoms, to contact trace those people that had contact. We don't even have advice at this point that says to quarantine those people. But I'm sure that the advice from the Department of Health and from CDC will be further provided as time goes on. You probably remember that last week the president asked CDC to go back and reconsider their school protocols. Those have not been released yet. So what I'm saying, Mr. Otero, is that we know the first part of the protocol, isolate, contact family. The second part of the protocol and contact trace. The second part of the protocol to quarantine, to close down a facility, we don't have clear direction on that yet.
So we're looking at starting school in about 5 weeks, right? And
all right,
around there, right? The 17th, am I right on that?
that's correct.
And I know I asked this one last night again, but I want to ask it again. Are you going to log everybody that's taking their temperature to say, yes, they worked, they did, or are you just going to take temperatures?
Again, so we continue to have those discussions. We had a 2-hour meeting today with elementary principals, and Mark Garcia, our bus supervisor, was on that call. We talked about the dilemma that you raised last night, that we really should take the temperature of a student at the first point of contact with the school district. So we talked to Mark about how we can have aides or bus drivers, if we have a reduced number of routes, take the temperatures when students get on the bus. Those students who are driven to school by their parents, and it looks to us from our preliminary survey that'll be as much as 60% of our families, those temperatures will be taken at the entrance to the school. There will, in most schools, be more than one entrance, one for the buses and one for a drop-off. We will be distributing breakfast to every student at that point, but we will also take their temperature. Susan mentioned today, and Susan, jump in here because you've got more information than I do, that our nurse has told us that there's some very good programs that will allow us to log on our cell phones student temperatures and be able to track those students who we've taken temperatures of. Susan, you have more information about that than I do.
Yes, Mr. Gibson, Mr. President, members of the board, Mr. Otero. Yes, that is correct. Nurse Jackie is now our district charge nurse. So prior to her becoming our district charge nurse, she was the charge nurse for our district, but she was also assigned to Bosque Farms Elementary. So Nurse Jackie is already working. She started working on Monday. And so she's been in contact with us all summer, but she's now on site. She did receive some information regarding some new programs that do track staff temperatures and student temperatures. And so we can track them through the use of an iPad.
Okay, so I got a key question right here. So if you have let's say I'm a teacher and I have a family member that has an ailment that could be exposed to COVID easily if I'm exposed. And I feel that my safety is at risk because I'm also going to be risking the safety of my family members. What is in place for a teacher that claims that their safety is at risk? What are you going to accommodate them to teach from home? What do you guys have in place for that?
Yes, we will. That is considered a disqualifying or a qualifying condition, depending on how you look at it. What we will need from a staff member who they themselves feel that they're at risk because of an underlying health condition or have a family member at home with the same issue, they will need to complete our paperwork about the qualifying condition. As I said last night, we have our attorneys working on that paperwork. But no, that teacher will not have to come to school if they can show that they or someone they live with has an underlying condition. They will become part of our team that will do remote learning, remote teaching.
Okay. Now, if a staff member comes down with COVID or gets infected by somebody else and required to stay home, I would hope that their sick leave is not going to be taken from them to stay home. How's that going to work?
There are federal guidelines, and I can't quote them off the top of my head, Mr. Otero. I've got them someplace on my desk, about sick leave versus leave that would be as a result of contracting COVID. I can send those to you. I don't have them right in front of me.
Okay. And
And do you remember those?
Go ahead. Did you ask something, Mr. Gibson?
I asked Brian Baca if he remembers what those guidelines were.
Well, actually, there's two different things that come into play. It's the extended FMLA, which again relates to cases when we have COVID or caring for a person with COVID. And so what we're trying to do is create guidance and protocol for when we have these cases up there. So those are what we're working with both the Department of Health, with our charge nurse, and also our legal counsel to develop those procedures and to have a flow chart of how it's going to impact the employee in the district. So those are things that we are working on right now. But it is the extended FMLA is part of the legislation regarding COVID.
Okay. I've got to be honest with you that there's been so many emails that were sent today that I think the whole board got them. And it was with the time frame that we had, it's kind of hard to try to address everything that they've asked for. So I'm trying to go about this the best way I can. I do want to ask because I've got Mr. Aragon on my screen.
If you forward them to us, we will be glad to answer those questions on our website.
Okay. Mr. Aragon, are you with me?
Acting Superintendent, Mr. Gibson, Board President, Mr. Smith, board members, Mr. Aragon, Valencia High School. Yes, sir, Mr. Otero, how can I help you?
Have you visited with your staff as to what their sentiments are about returning to school?
Yes, sir.
On the hybrid situation?
Yes, sir.
And what is, I mean, I know the survey was done, but it was done about 3 or 4 weeks ago, but everything has changed since then. So my question to you is, what are the sentiments of your staff? Do they want to come back? Do they want to do remote? What is your consensus? What is what would you say is the majority of them?
So we have about 10 to 12 teachers who have expressed concern about coming back. And what we did is we sent out a survey within our staff via email, and that's where I'm getting that number from.
Okay, and actually, I'll be honest with you, Mr. Gibson, I'd like to really hear from all the principals to see how their staff has reacted to the situation of us coming back in a hybrid situation.
Well, we certainly can hear from the ones that are on this call. I have 6 or 7 of them. Darian, Lawrence, Jennifer, Koya, Jessica, I think that's everybody. express your opinions.
If you don't mind, folks, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot, it's just that many of the people that I spoke to today and that have raised concerns have said that, and who knows, maybe not. I'm just voicing the concern for them that that they really don't want to come back and they don't really feel that people have taken their.
I guess, Mr. Otero, I would rather, if you want us to survey the staff and find out their sentiments, I would rather do that than rely on the phone calls that a board member might get. I don't think that's a really good sample. If you want us to survey the staff, we will try to do that tomorrow and have it ready for tomorrow night's meeting. But I'm not a fan of relying on phone calls that come to any number of board members.
No, that's not my concern. My question is, just as Mr. Aragon answered, if I can hear from the principals, how many in visiting with their staff, percentage-wise, I don't have to know exactly how many are concerned about coming back to school, or how many. That's what I'm looking for. Is how many are concerned from the principals? And I see Ms. Jaramillo has her hand up.
President Smith, board members, Mr. Gibson, we had a staff meeting today and discussed different scenarios. And out of about 65 of our teachers, over the last few weeks, I've only had about 3 or 4 contact me out of the 65 that had a concern about being in the hybrid model.
Okay.
Mr. Sosa, what are you hearing?
Yes, sir. President Smith, members of the board, Mr. Gibson, what I've kind of seen from my teachers, I've only heard actually from two teachers. One teacher saying it's more of her father being ill in another state because of an illness that she may have to go to and be out of it and being exposed out of state. That was one of them. The other one was because they haven't had a newborn just come home and relying on what's going to happen when they go home. And I totally understand the baby's on oxygen. Those are the only 2 staff members that have reached out to me. The one that has a daughter that just came home, the one that basically has someone at home that he is worried about going home to. Other than that, they've heard the hybrid schedule, and I haven't heard anything else from any of my other teachers.
Koya, Jessica, you want to jump in?
Yeah. Board members, President Smith and Mr. Gibson. As my staff, I have 4 staff members that have reached out to me. 2 are taking care of family members, and the other 2 have underlying conditions. But other than that, we're ready to go.
Okay, and,
Who just spoke?
Oh, I'm so sorry. This is Jessica Montaño, principal at KGE.
Yep. Koya Matthews from Bosque Farms.
President Smith, board members, Mr. Gibson. I have had one staff meeting, it's been about a month ago, just to touch base with my staff and let them know what we knew at that time. We have not done a formal survey of our staff at this time, but I have had individual teachers reach out to me through phone calls, text, emails, voicing their concerns about returning to school. I don't have a percentage, I would say 5 or 6.
Jennifer Garland from Valencia Middle School. Jennifer?
President Smith, members of the board, Mr. Gibson. Actually, we are in the planning stages of having a staff meeting on Monday to kind of talk with our teachers. I know personally I've had 2 teachers contact me regarding underlying conditions. And I believe the same 2 teachers have contacted Mr. Baca as well, and we're aware of those. But those were the only 2 that we have been in contact with or have contacted us at this point.
Okay, so I thank you all for that. I guess we're missing like maybe half our principals.
A little more than half, probably.
Yeah, is Jennifer, are you the principal of the middle school now?
No, she's the assistant principal. Mr.
Oh,
Baca,
okay.
Mr. Jason Baca was not able to be here tonight.
Okay, so I think we should really visit, and I think the staff needs to know, and I hope that we can start updating this on our website. The staff needs to know, you know, we're saying we think about FMLA, we're not really definite on our answers in reference to how this is going to happen, even on what if you know, what if we do have a person with COVID? And basically, Mr. Gibson, you're saying we don't have to shut down. We don't have to.
I didn't say that. I said the guidance we've received from the state and the Department of Health at this point is suggesting that we don't need to shut down. There will be further guidance between now and the opening day of school. We rely on the Department of Health to give us the best available information. I will tell you also, since you mentioned the website, I told you we would begin to put information up on the website today, and that did happen. I think the best way to communicate answers to your questions to both staff and families, if you forward those questions to us, we will be more than happy to put them on the website. We are in the midst, I told you we would also do frequently asked questions. I think that's the category that those questions would fall under, and we would be happy to respond to those. And I can assure you, as guidance from PED or the Department of Health or CDC changes, we'll add that to the website as well.
Okay, I've got plenty of questions because I'm trying to represent those people that emailed me today. I'm not trying to give anybody a hard time. We do not have.
There are concerns, so please.
Yeah, and we do not have. We don't have.
Send us the questions. We will respond to them on the website.
Okay, so we don't have public comment, and this is why I'm bringing this up right now. If I had to send you all the questions, I mean, if I had to ask all the questions, we'd be here to midnight. So I'm trying to pick and choose the questions that are redundant. So I'm not going to go that far. And I will accommodate with sending these questions. In fact, every board member's got these questions, I believe. So yeah, just remember that the members of our community are the ones that count. And I just want to make sure that we're not going to go to hybrid. And who knows, it might change after tomorrow's governor's announcement. Who knows? We don't know. I for one, right now, I'm going to tell you that I'm definitely not for the hybrid reentry. I'm 100% for the remote. We are very capable of doing the remote. Our technology department is probably second to none, and our district is probably second to none when it comes to our technology. And I can appreciate that very, very much, and I appreciate the hard work that everybody's doing. I know that our administration has gone through a lot of work, including principals, in trying to create this hybrid reentry. But all this information that we're getting from last night and tonight is pretty much the same information that everybody else is getting, we as a board, for the first time. Although, Mr. Gibson, yes, you have updated us and send us an update as how you're proceeding. So this is all new to us, and this is why we have so many questions that we're asking. I'm just concerned that that we start rolling and all of a sudden we get a flat tire and then we got to go a different direction. So it's not something that I'm trying to do to pick on people in any way, but I am concerned, and I'm trying to speak for those that cannot be in this meeting to represent themselves. So it's tough. It's tough for me too. So I just made a commitment and I'm doing it, you know, so.
So please send us your questions. We will answer them as quickly as we can. I want you to understand again the context I mentioned last night. We received a directive 4, 5, 6 weeks ago from the Department of Education telling us to open, the governor had authorized opening in a hybrid schedule. We have been working day after day to develop that hybrid schedule. We've made many changes to it. As part of that, we have looked, as I told you last night, at safety, at transportation, at food services, at technology. The ultimate decision is yours. It's not ours. We did what we were asked to do. We developed a hybrid schedule. If you choose to bring the students back in a reduced mode with not all the kids in the school at one time, we've done our best thinking and developed the best plan and best schedule that we can. If you as a Board of Education, or as you said, the governor says, we do not want students to return to school, obviously that's what we'll do. The second part of what we've planned is by not opening till the 17th, we've allowed ourselves the window of time to improve our remote delivery. We had extensive discussions today about how we will develop much more meaningful lessons and activities to provide to our students than we were able to on very short notice last spring. So whichever way you decide to go, we'll go. But I would like the opportunity to answer questions that are coming from the community. If you forward those to us as you get them, we will respond to them.
I'll do that. One more thing that I'd like to hear from, because not much has been mentioned about special ed, and if Mr. Gibson, if you don't mind, if I can hear from Ms. Chavez, or we can hear from Ms. Chavez on how we're going to address the needs of our special ed students if we go to the hybrid. Not only that, I'm sure there's been discussion, if we do not go to the hybrid, how are we going to address the needs of our special ed students if it's remote?
Susan, you're on.
Okay. Mr. Board President, Mr. Smith, members of the board, Acting Superintendent Gibson, and Mr. Otero, what we will do, of course, all of our students that are in special education, they're general education students first. So we attend to those general education needs first, and then we look at their specific needs based on their IEP. We have had some parents reach out to us that have children who have very specific medical needs, which may limit their ability to attend school. So we would continue to provide remote instruction per their IEP for those students that do have those specific medical needs. For students who have ancillary services, we are looking at not pulling them out of the classrooms. The ancillary services would push in because we want to avoid the cross-contamination. When we have ancillary providers who have multiple school sites, we are not going to be having those ancillary providers go to multiple school sites for the same various reasons because of the cross-contamination. They would be delivering those services remotely from a school site. Our diagnosticians travel throughout the entire district. They are now based at special services, and they will be testing students when we are allowed. Currently, we are not allowed to test students face-to-face per PED guidelines until August 3rd, which is a Monday. When they give us the go-ahead to go and start testing our students, they will be testing the students at special services. And we have 5 different areas designated as special services for our students to be tested so that the students are in a social distance environment with the diagnostician who's testing. When they're in that close proximity with the diagnosticians, we have face shields, we have face masks, and the district recently purchased some actual shields, plastic shields that we would put in between the diagnostician and the student being tested.
Ms. Chavez, extremely impressive. Very, very informative. It seems like you were ready for this question. So thank you. I mean, that was very well detailed. So great job. Thank you. I didn't expect you said that without even a breath. So excellent. Thank you very much. The one question I have though is, have you communicated with transportation on how the needs of our special needs kids are going to be addressed transportation-wise?
We have, in collaboration with Mr. Baca and Mr. Garcia, our Director of Transportation, we have our inclusion support coaches that will be starting their contract on Monday. They will also be making contact with our students who receive transportation as part of their IEP. There's a set number of those students. There's probably, I'm just making an estimate, less than 200 students who have special education services on their IEP for transportation. So we will be contacting those parents to see what decision they will make, if their students will ride the bus or they will be dropping off their students, or if they are even attending the hybrid model. And all of our special education buses, they do have bus assistants and the bus driver.
Excellent. Well, a lot of information. I will send Mr. Gibson all the questions. There's plenty more questions than what I asked. Mr. Gibson, I will be sending you questions only. I will not be sending you who sent me those questions, okay?
Don't need to know that.
Yeah, so that's how it would work. So I don't want this to be my meeting. I hope our other board members have questions as well. So I sign off at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Stephen Otero.
Mr. President,
Mr. Vickers.
since Ms. Chavez is ready to go with questions, I have a concern there is a health risk for not going back to school with students that are isolated at home, mental health, but also issues with abuse and such as that. And I was wondering if somebody has an idea of the percentage of abuse reporting that is initiated from school sites by teachers, counselors, whatever, to CYFD, for instance. Does anybody have a feel for that?
Mr. Smith, members of the board, Mr. Vickers, we do not have a specific number. However, I will tell you that, and the principals that are on this conversation, they probably meet with CYFD on a routine basis, if not every single day, when our students are in school. I have met with CYFD a few times over the last 2 weeks for students that are in foster care and they're transferring to Osuna schools. They are working remotely and they are completing their home visits remotely. So that's put a strain on CYFD for their ability to go into the home setting to have home visits. So they were supposed to start home visits in September. They have moved that date back indefinitely. So many of our CYFD case managers are working from home. So they're in the same position that we are in. The way they contact students is via Zoom or whatever video conferencing program they're using at the time. I will tell you that mental health is a very big concern for our district. Miss Mary McGowan, she supervises the mental health team, and she has worked in collaboration with UNM on training our mental health team, which consists of our social workers, our counselors, and our school psychologists on preparing to re-enter school. We know that many of us have experienced trauma during this pandemic, which has impacted family lives, which has impacted their social lives. And not to get into too much detail, but there was some information in the journal in the last month. I'm not sure how many of you are able to read it. The number of unexpected deaths in New Mexico has increased by 20% since April. And that includes death by suicide, tragic accidents. Other deaths are not expected. So New Mexico actually right now is unfortunately ranked #1 for suicide in the state. So we definitely do need to address social emotional learning. And Ms. Mary McGowan has met with our mental health team. We'll be meeting with them very soon to help with the reentry process into school. So that definitely is a concern that our students are in these settings and we're not seeing them.
I appreciate that. It's my personal belief that the students in the district are in more danger being isolated at home than they are going to school. And especially the younger ones, they have nowhere to go. They have no one to talk to. They're stuck at home. If there's abuse going on, they have no one to report it to. But if they were in the school setting, they could talk to a teacher or a counselor or something like that. So I think that's a factor we have got to look at when we make decisions about what's the best thing we can do for these students. Thank you.
Board members, Mr. Frank.
Mr. President,
Mr. Frank Otero.
this is Frank Otero. Kind of been sitting here listening, and I've been getting a lot of those letters also, and comments from people, and I think I gave someone an answer a while ago that I don't think we're sure exactly where we're going to go. You know, I know that we have to have a plan. I mean, I'm not going to ask everybody a lot of questions. I've been around a long time, and I know a lot of the other scenarios. And as Mr. Vickers alluded to, that concern came up immediately when we closed down the schools about the safety of children. And yes, it's a difficult time, and I'm familiar with some cases that CYFD's doing everything over the phone, not even Zoom. I mean, they're not even looking at children, even a photograph. So there has to be a concern about those and I've said this over the years, but about the haves and the have-nots, and the have-nots are out there, and these little children out there suffering from a lot of issues that we have in Valencia County that, it's there. And so we really have to be concerned about that. I'm also concerned about the virus kind of poking its head up again right now. Valencia County is on an increase, and throughout the last 5 months or whatever, when you look at statistics and you look at where you're at, you look at where you have the maximum amount of infections. In Valencia County we haven't reached that yet. We did a good job of being safe. I mean, the community, and then people got tired of being cooped up, and it's happening. So we're probably taking up a lot of time into tonight's agenda, because we're going to talk about this tomorrow night, and this will be the sole item tomorrow night. But we're getting calls from staff, some staff, whether they're going to have a job or not, whether some of the aides are going to have a job, or whether they can be eligible to work in other capacities. And I think the whole process is in the making right now. I hear Mr. Gibson. I hear Mr. Otero, what he's saying. I hear the principals, and I see it even, with my own family. So and then we've got the threats of, if we don't start up school, they're going to pull our federal funding and all that kind of stuff. And to me, that's all just posturing, and it's a shame that the politics is going to take over on this. But the bottom line is, my job is to protect the health and safety of the students, the staff, and anyone involved, and I take that responsibility seriously. I do realize and I realize that's a difficult balance, because there's probably, I'm going to say a rough guess, about 20% that don't want to come back yet, and maybe more than that. But our decisions are fluid right now. We'll discuss what we did last night. We'll discuss it today, and the governor will come up with some more. I just looked at the statistics today. There's more cases of Valencia County. Bernalillo County is skyrocketing. I mean, they passed the Navajo Nation now. So, I don't know about you, but where I live, Bernalillo County's about 4 miles away. So we have some serious issues, and I'd urge the board to, as we get those questions, to provide those to the superintendent's office, and see if we can solve some of these answers. But here again, I just want to stress that it's difficult, and we'll take it a day at a time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Otero. So I just have a couple of questions about the rotation for the plans that we provided. And the only reason I'm asking these questions is I want to understand all the particulars of this. So let's just take into consideration one of the high schools. If I'm in Group A, and first of all, how did we decide I was in Group A? How did I get in Group A? Are we doing it by alphabetical order? Are we drawing straws? I don't know. Who decides who's in what group? How are we doing that?
President Smith, board members, Mr. Gibson, we, for the most part, determined that by alphabetical. They're in bands of grade level, and then they're also in bands of last name. And so by last name, and making sure that we have even numbers on each day, each of the groups. So when students report, that there's not one day that has more students than another.
Okay, so, and just so I can understand if I'm understanding the plan correctly. So I'm in Group A, and I have Mr. Jones for math on Monday and Tuesday in person. What does Mr. Jones do for me all the other days until I come back in person? Do I have Mr. Jones teaching me remotely, or do I have Ms. Thomas being my remote teacher, I guess, is my question.
So the students that are in, let's just say in group A, will be receiving face-to-face instruction. All the other students that are in groups B, C, and D, they're at home, they will be Zooming in remotely and watching the lesson.
The exact same lesson?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that answers that question, so I don't even have to ask part B of that.
And then, Mr. Smith, can I also share that one particular teacher that is doing the lesson, that teacher is going to be grouped with a team of teachers that will help him facilitate the lesson. So there will be somebody there to help take attendance. There will be another teacher there or an aide there that will call on students, check on them over the phone. There will be the teacher there that will help participate in the chat. And so, and then also other teachers on that team that will help provide feedback. So that one particular teacher will be in a team that will help support all the students.
Okay, all right, thank you. And for our 100% virtual kids, when do we identify? When do we have to identify? Do we have a date for that? Or are they, I understood that we were gonna call the parents and find out who we needed to put in the category of being 100% remote, 100% virtual. Is that correct?
That is correct, and that is in process. I've asked the principals to contact every family to find out who is remote and who is coming back in the hybrid schedule, if that's what we choose to do. As you can imagine, it's going to take a few days to do that, and maybe even a week to do that. But once those students are identified, we are intending to deliver the same curriculum to those students, except remotely, using some of the same strategies that Ms. Jaramillo just described to you. So we obviously need to find out who are the teachers who aren't coming back, who will be delivering remote instruction, who are the students not coming back, who will be receiving remote instruction. But our goal is that all of our students who are Los Lunas students will stay with the Los Lunas schools, whether it's in a hybrid schedule or by remote learning. So we have, you've heard the high school plan for how to deliver instruction. The elementary and middle school plans are similar, but not exactly the same. But we will be delivering lessons on Zoom. We will be delivering lessons on YouTube. We will be following students, but the core issue that I've expressed to all of the teachers or all of the principals to deliver to all of the teachers is that this will be a full school day, whatever that day is. And it's not going to be the 8:30 to 2:30 day. It's going to be more like an 8:30 to 1:30 day. But every student will have access to that curriculum delivered either in person or remotely. And it will be the same curriculum.
Okay, and also, so PED, I guess, and I don't know I'm assuming the guidance is still the same, that we were to, if we were going to come back in a hybrid model, we were going to come back at 50% capacity with social distancing. We're coming back at 25% in our high school and 33% in the other one. Is that correct?
Well, the guidance was that we should come back at 50% capacity for the elementary grades, realizing that the middle school and high school kids are more difficult to socially distance given their numbers and their size and the facilities themselves. So our priority was always 50% for elementary students, as much as we could for middle and high school students.
Okay. I just wanted to understand why we were a little bit different than that 50% number.
It's a matter of space for the most part. We have some classrooms, and I'll use Valencia Middle School as an example, where socially distancing students 6 by 6 feet, no matter how we configure the rooms, we can't get more than 12 or 13 students in those rooms. Our general class size at the middle level has been in the range of 30 to 35. So we need to do that in theoretically 3 sessions. If fewer kids come back, we might be able to do it in 2 sessions.
So if we have schools that we have a lot of students that are going to be 100% virtual in, and we
Yep.
have access to more classrooms, would we be able to consider maybe taking more high school kids, raising that 25% and taking more high school kids and maybe have them take classes at RGE or something if we had numerous classrooms there? I mean,
I think that's an uncomfortable situation to start mixing populations because of the rapid spread of COVID. If we had fewer kids coming back to high school, we might be able to do more days in the high school, but I would be very reluctant to mix high school kids in with elementary or middle school kids. I think their parents would be even more reluctant than I am.
Okay. So that's it for the questions that I have as far as what we're doing. In your opinion, we are 100% ready to go totally remote if that's the case?
Yes. Well, I shouldn't say we are right now, but we will be by the 17th of August.
Okay.
We have 2 full weeks of the staff being together. We have teachers who are ready to go right now, but we want to make sure that every teacher is ready to go by the 17th of August.
Right. So what I'm referring to is maybe technology-wise and access-wise.
Technology and access-wise, we're ready to go. Now, can I tell you that students that don't have internet access will always have it? I can't, and that's not going to happen. What I can tell you is that we are doing everything we can to provide electronic connection for those kids. And I, again, had another meeting today with Mike Good to go over where we're going to locate those modems on our buses in various more remote parts of the district. That information will be out to parents. It won't be in their living room for the most part, but it will be that they will be able to get access. What I can tell you is every student K through 12 will have a device. The question came up today, what about pre-K? We're looking to see what we can do to have devices for pre-K as well.
Okay, I don't think that I have any more questions as far as being prepared to go to that option. But what I would like to say before we move on to the next item on our agenda is to the staff and to everybody that's watching, I want to thank you for your patience. And I know that we're making some of our decisions after some other districts did. But me personally, I feel that the most current information is beneficial to me to consider our options. And with so many changes in the dynamics of the situation that we're in, I thought that it was better to have the latest information that we could get. And this is getting down there to where the information that we're getting is really fresh, even though it changes daily. I too have got a lot of input all over the spectrum, and I could probably share the exact same emails you're going to get from the other board members, Mr. Gibson, but I'll do that as well. From starting schools 100% to keeping kids at home. It's a broad spectrum of that. And as board members, we have a really, really tough decision to make tomorrow. And there's a lot of factors that I'm going to use to consider when I make my decision, and I would like to go over some of those. First of all, I want to state, and I've talked to Mr. Gibson about this, in-person instruction is by far the most effective, but it's also the most social, in my opinion. I understand the schedule, even though there's less students, that might be easier to isolate the students from each other. When I read the schedule on any given day, schedule you're on. We also have parents that we have to consider that are working from home because they have to stay home with their kids, so they're not working. We have staff that are going to go back to work and their children to consider. at home, no matter what method we go into. If we go hybrid or if we stay remote, those staff members, and these are just things that I'm considering. If we come back and our teachers start getting sick and we're down a few teachers, we're not going to have enough staff to teach no matter which option we're choosing. So I know that studies in the younger kids are changing every single day. They're definitely up. More percentage of kids are getting sick. Their symptoms remain low. They appear asymptomatic. We don't know, the studies are still out, whether asymptomatic kids can even pass the virus, but we know that their symptoms are a lot milder. So we could have kids, in my opinion, that are attending school that may be positive with minor symptoms that are so minor that their parents didn't take them to the doctor, and they could be in our classrooms for 5 days. I don't know that. I don't know all of the dynamics of how it works with the younger children, but it's something that I'm definitely considering and doing some more research on. Then there's ultimately the overall safety of this district, and that includes our students and our staff. And we have numbers in our staff, which one of you mentioned, and I apologize, I didn't write it down, that are in this high risk bracket, that are part of those staff members that either they have a family member or themselves or a child that they don't want to take this illness to. They don't want to be at risk for that. And I understand that you guys are saying if we should choose a hybrid method that you were going to make accommodations for that, and I greatly appreciate it. But the safety of our students and staff overall is one of the bullets that I'm going to consider one of the most influential in my thought process. But I also consider that there's a good possibility we're going to be traveling between options. We can be remote today and hybrid tomorrow, and then have to go back to remote and then go 100% if somebody comes up with a shot. We have no idea. In 3 months, we could be 100% open. And in 3 months, we could still be remote. So it's going to be interesting to see what the governor has to say tomorrow. She may provide guidance that actually takes this out of our hands. I don't know. We will have a meeting tomorrow night. I appreciate the staff's patience. I appreciate all of your hard work getting all of these options ready. I'm fully confident that no matter where we go with this, you're going to be prepared and you're going to educate our kids to the best of our ability, no matter what scenario we pick. That remains 100% sure in my mind. To all of the parents and the community, I appreciate your patience as well. We're trying to make the best decision we can. And I believe in my board members. I believe they're going to take everything into consideration, and tomorrow we'll have a little bit more discussion. And I really believe we're going to come up with what we feel is the best option for this district and this community, and more so than anything, the children in this district. So that's all I have to say.
Mr. Smith?
Mr. Hidon.
I have a couple follow-up questions. I spoke yesterday. I know we're on this item of the hybrid schedule, and I have just a couple of questions. I'd rather bring them up tonight under this item, if I would be allowed. They're real quick ones.
Go ahead.
First, I want to thank the staff for this model of the hybrid. And I agree with you, Mr. Smith. I can see us going back and forth from hybrid to distance learning. But when we go to hybrid, I want to be 100% ready. Last night I asked a question and I received calls and emails today regarding our protocol. And I asked the question, so I didn't sleep good on it last night. I called Superintendent Mr. Gibson today. And I think he came up with the idea. We're asked to go to active shooter trainings. We're asked to do fire drills. We're asked to do these other things. And we understand the protocol. If somebody sees a fire, we know how to evacuate. We know where we're going. What I would like to see, Mr. Gibson, and some of your organized task force that you have on with this hybrid schedule is if you can figure out a plan and we can do some dry runs. So we get a call at 10 o'clock in the morning at Las Lunas High School that an administrator, a teacher has COVID. What are we going to do with that teacher? Are we going to put him in a room. Where is that room? Does everybody know where that room is at? What's going to happen with that classroom? There'll be 3, 4, and 5 steps to be taken care of. So by the time our assistant superintendent, deputy superintendent Baca gets involved, he's going to ask what's happened, where are we at? He's going to know these steps have already been taking place. So he's going to be able to understand, jump in, and provide the resources that he needs. So that's one thing I would like to ask. So when I really believe we will be in this hybrid sooner than later, but I want to be ready for it. I don't want. I just want to make sure we have the safety of everybody in mind.
Let me respond to that, because I did have a lengthy discussion with Mr. Hiron about that today. I think that's a great idea. A mock drill that we walk through in every school so that we know exactly what we do if we have a COVID positive person. We know who does what, when they do it. As you said, Mr. Baca is our contact with the Department of Health. We often make that contact directly through local officials in the village of Los Lunas. I think we need to formalize that protocol, mock it up, walk through it, and make sure everybody knows what they're doing. I think that's a great idea.
And thank you, Mr. Gibson. Mr. Smith, just like you and the rest of the board, I received emails, my school email, my personal email, text messages, and I will be forwarding those questions to you, Mr. Gibson. Last night, I did not sleep good after that meeting. I won't sleep good again. This question, and I'm not going to expect an answer. I don't want an answer from the board members, and I don't want to feel like I'm putting them on the spot, but this is something we need to think about. And when we are in the hybrid schedule and we have a wave of COVID coming through our school, let me go back a little bit. For us to have a meeting, school board, an emergency meeting, that takes 24 hours to publish it and then have a meeting. And we can do that. All these board members are responsible enough. These questions they ask tonight are great. But to make a move one way or the other, we have to have a meeting. The question I'm going to ask the board members just to think about is, if we're in this, we will be in this hybrid, I believe, sometime this year. When we're in this hybrid and we do have a wave of COVID, what's that threshold going to be? What's that magic number going to be that we're going to say, we're going to automatically have a policy and procedure in place, and Mr. Gibson's going to say, shut that school down, let's go back virtual. I don't know if it's going to be infections or it's going to be casualties or what, but that's something we need to think about. And I don't know if I don't know how we implement that. If it's going to be in a policy, if that's going to be, I don't know. But we need to ask ourselves what that threshold number is going to be that we give Mr. Gibson and the staff that automatically, God bless you, that we shut the schools down. Thank you, Mr. Gibson. Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Hidon. So obviously this is very trying and very difficult for all of us, but we will prevail. I have 100% confidence in our district and our community and our students. So if there's no further questions, I will go to item number 10A, schedule of checks written. Mr. Dave Vickers.
All right. I was just happened to look through the checks written, and in conjunction with what we did at our last board meeting, I do have a question about how we do this. At the last board meeting, for legal services, we approved an RFP for legal services through June of 2023 with 3 different law firms. And my understanding was that was a continuation anyway from the previous year, that those law firms had been providing services for us through June 30th of this year. And so under checks written on page 18, I see a check written to a different law firm a couple of checks, but the total was $14,444. And I'm wondering why we're paying a different law firm that's not one of the ones that we have a contract for legal service with. Can anybody explain that to me? The law firm that was written to was Himes, Petarka, Fester attorneys.
Yes, that is the law firm that our attorney that's been working with us is working for, Mr. Vickers. That was, I'm not sure if I could say his name during the meeting, but that was the one that we've been working with that is responding to the questions that we have.
Okay, so I'm wondering why
providing legal advice to the school board. He's been in a lot of our meetings.
Okay, so I'm wondering why we're employing an attorney from a firm we don't have a contract with.
So he had a contract with us, is that correct, Claire? He had a purchase order?
Mr. Smith, members of the board, Superintendent Gibson, we did have a small purchase order in place for the individual that you guys are referring to, and that was because he used to work for one of the companies that we have a contract with.
Thank you, Claire.
Okay, so I guess moving forward, we will be only utilizing legal services from these three companies that we've approved.
Unless we approve legal services from another one as a board. Yes.
Okay, so we as a board can approve services with anybody we choose, regardless of what kind of contracts they have with the district?
I'm not sure the question, and I'm not a contract person. You would have to ask Claire that.
Okay, so I'll ask her, what is the proper protocol for services that aren't, we have no contract with the company? For instance, legal services, Ms. Siemens.
So are you asking if we wanted to hire another attorney, what would be the process for that?
Right.
Okay.
Would it even be legal?
Mr.
Smith?
Mr. Smith, members of the board, Mr. Gibson, I have Michelle Romero in my office right now, and I'm going to have her help me answer that question. She is responsible for our RFPs and our contracts. So Michelle?
President Smith, board members, Mr. Gibson, the process for having a contract with a professional service is that an RFP is issued and the firms that are evaluated and recommended for award and are awarded a contract are the ones that the school should be using. Typically, and the reason is because it's an evaluation process. So we do already have three contracts with other firms, and the attorney that you're referring to is not one of those that is contracted.
Right, but he had a purchase order from the one he previously worked at.
May I answer? My understanding is that it was a small purchase order for a specific project, and that was stemming off of his previous company or firm that he worked with. And that was not in conjunction with any of the services that are being received now by the district.
Okay.
Okay, so what is the proper thing that we should be doing moving forward from here as a board as far as legal services?
So if we wanted to hire a law firm How would we go about that? A different law firm, one that's not one of the three that is already on contract.
Well, I think that right now at this point, since we already have other firms contracted, that we should see out that contract. And then once we do that and it's over, then we can go ahead and go out again for an RFP. And that company, as well as others, is welcome to offer a proposal.
So if they offer a proposal, when that time comes, we could vote on that.
Yes, that would be in the next 2 years.
All contracts are annually renewed. So at the last meeting, you renewed the contract of the 3 firms that responded to and were chosen in that initial RFP. If the board decided, excuse me, at the end of June of next year, or actually it would have to occur before then, if you wanted to rebid legal services, you certainly could do that.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Mr. Smith? Mr. Smith?
Mr. Hidon.
Mr. Vickers brings up a great question. Board member Otero and I sit on the finance committee, and we bring these types of questions up all the time. And I'm going to say March, April timeframe, we brought a question up similar to this, and they referred back to our policies and procedures saying that they're allowed to spend a certain amount before it goes to the board. And this number that board member Vickers brings up is way below that threshold. But I'm glad he brought that up. And maybe that's something we need to address in our policies and procedures. Ms. Simmons, what is that number? What's the threshold that we have for legal services? I know there's 3 different numbers.
Mr. Hito and members of the board, Mr. Gibson, the threshold for professional services is $40,000.
How many?
$40,000 is the threshold for professional services.
Okay, well,
And that means, what that means is that's 40,000 before they need to go before board approval, right?
Yes, that is correct.
Thank you.
well,
Thank
and
you, Mr.
the
Smith.
number, that I pointed out is from a check written in June. But my understanding is there was many checks written since the beginning of the year to this firm. I don't know what the total is. So that's just one example.
You have any further comments on it, Mr. Vickers?
No, that's it.
Thank you. We will move forward to item number 10C2. That is,
Excuse me, Mr. Smith, members of the board. I will need a vote, please.
oh, I'm sorry, Karen.
All
My
right.
bad. Let me go back up. So I will stand for a motion on item 10AI, schedule of checks written.
Mr. Smith, I move to approve checks written from June 2020.
A motion by Mr. Eloy Hidon to approve item 10A1, schedule of checks written. I'll stand for a second.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Mr. Otero. I have a second by Mr. Stephen Otero. Mr. Vickers, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Frank Otero, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Otero, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Eloy Hidon, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Now that brings us to item 10C2, which is CES for refurbishing of gym floors at Valencia High School, RGE, Las Unas High School, Blue School Gym, Las Unas Middle School out of 2 mil. Mr. Stephen Otero.
The only reason I brought this to be a discussion item is that when it came up before finance, a question was asked and they didn't get back to us. The question was asked if the floor at the Blue School Gym is wood or is it a rubberized floor? Because if it's a rubberized floor, then the definition on the request for or proposal is not valid because it's rubberized floor. So there should be a better description. So I don't know if it's rubberized or wood floor.
No, you must have missed my email, Mr. Otero. I sent you an email indicating it was a wood floor that was replaced approximately 6 years ago with a picture of it.
Then I missed it. So no more questions.
Thank you, Mr. Gibson. Thank you, Mr. Stephen Otero. Stand for a motion on item 10C2.
I make a motion. I'm sorry?
The refinishing of gym floors at Valencia High School, RGE, Las Unas High School, Blue School Gym, and Las Unas Middle School.
I so move to approve these purchase.
I have a motion by Mr. Stephen Otero to approve item 10C2. I'll stand for a second.
I'll second that.
I have a second by Mr. David Vickers. Dave Vickers, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Frank Otero, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Otero, how do you vote?
Yes.
Hilo Hidon, how do you vote?
Yes.
I vote yes. That brings us to item 10C4, CES for District Warehouse Janitorial Supplies for Maintenance and Operations out of 2 mil. Mr. Stephen Otero.
Here again, I'm bringing this up as a discussion item. Just kind of questioning our purchasing department. If we are going to start this practice from this point on in going after bids through CES for any projects or products. I know we didn't do that for the fencing, and that was CES last month. We're doing it for the custodial products, which is this. And I just want to know if that's the practice we're going to be taking from this point on.
I'll respond to that, Mr. Otero. We are looking at some new procedures to warehouse those items that we use on a regular basis, primarily for maintenance and custodial. So we asked the warehouse manager and the maintenance staff to give us a list of items that we use on a regular basis that could be warehoused, that we could then take out of our warehouse as opposed to ordering piecemeal. We put those together, excuse me, in a quote, and we went through CES to seek bids on these items. Brady Industries came back $16,000 less than the next lowest bid. So that's what we're recommending to you. So we didn't actually go out for a district RFP. We went for quotes through CES. But if you'd like in the future, we can certainly go to a district bid.
No, my question was not, I'm not questioning the bid. I think it's a good process, especially now that there might be a shortage on disinfectants and everything else. My question was, is this the practice that we're going to take from this point on for major bids to get 3 prices from CES?
I can't say that we would do that categorically.
Okay.
Our procurement department bids a lot of things through local RFPs developed by them and sent out to bid. This is a circumstance in which we did this right now. It was the fastest and best way to get quotes for the items that we want, but this is not going to be the overall practice. We will make recommendations, or the procurement department will make recommendations. Should we piggyback off a state bid? Should we piggyback off a bid from another school district? Should we use CES, or should we go out to bid ourselves? So we will continue to use all 4 of those options.
Okay, and I just think it's the amount of being $125,000, somewhere there around. As high as that amount is, and we're going to get 3 bids, I think in total fairness to those that are bidding it, I would think that sealed time-stamped bids should be required for something this large. That's just my personal feeling. By no means am I against this. I think we got to move forward with this, and I will
Given time in the future and the fact that this is a fairly recent change to our warehousing, I can assure you we will look at the best way to do this in the future.
Excellent.
this bid was a very solid bid, and as I said, it was $16,000 better than the next lowest bid.
And Brady is, they're a big company, and I'm sure that they can take care of you or the school district better and faster than a smaller company. I understand that.
Okay.
No more questions? Did we lose Brian?
You did not lose me. I was muted. My bad. I will stand for a motion on item 10C4, Brady Industries for District Warehouse Janitorial Supplies for Maintenance and Operations out of $2 million.
I make a motion that we approve the bid through Brady at 10C4.
I have a motion by Mr. Stephen Otero to approve the Brady Industries District Warehouse Janitorial Supplies out of $2 million. Stand for a second.
I will again second it.
The second by Mr. Dave Vickers. Mr. Dave Vickers, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Frank Otero, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Otero, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Eloy Hidon, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes. That brings us to item 10C5, approval of REDW LLC for purchase order increase out of operational. I'll start with Mr. Stephen Otero.
Yeah, the only reason I asked this to be out in the open is because it's dealing with our investigation, and I just want to make sure that the public and everyone knows that this is an ongoing investigation, and I have no issue with it. I just wanted to make sure it's out in the open.
Thank you, Mr. Otero. Mr. Frank Otero.
Yeah, I just want to say that, you know, we had interviewed one vendor initially, and then we had interviewed this next vendor, and I can't believe that I voted for the amount is $36,000, and from it's my understanding that they exceeded that amount already, and now they want another $19,000. And from what I've seen coming out of that thing, we're wasting the taxpayers' money. I have no intention of voting for this. Thank you.
Mr. David Vickers.
Well, I have issues with the whole process that got us here, but I was guilty of voting for it initially. I didn't realize all of the details. But I do have an issue with this particular request. It was not to exceed $36,000. And the last meeting we had with this company, one of the principals, I specifically asked where we were price-wise. They told me, they said, we should be fine. We should be come in under that number that we have the PO for. And then now we're talking about a huge increase, more than 50% more that they're wanting for this work. And, you know, any business that would give a customer a quote and exceed it by this month, they need to either eat it and say, we better bid better next time, or at the point where the money ran out, they should have come back and specifically asked at that point, okay, here we need more money because of this or that, rather than just do the work and give us a check and expect us to sign the check, no matter what the amount. I definitely won't support it either. It's terrible business practice. And if they're looking to do business with us again, they're gonna meet the same five of us again. So I wouldn't recommend it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vickers. So I don't have direct contact with this company. I don't know that any of us do, but I do know that Mr. Gibson has communicated with them. So Mr. Gibson, do you have any comments?
I will tell you about my conversations. The bills for this and the way this particular investigation was set up, it goes through the board's attorney. I have had numerous conversations with the particulars, the folks in the firm that are doing this investigation. I will tell you that I have developed great respect for them. I think they're doing a very thorough and complete job. When I realized that the bid was, that the price that they had charged us for the first 2 months' bills, which I eventually got from the attorney, exceeded the $36,000. Ms. Searmans and I had a phone conversation with the folks that are running this investigation and asked them to give us an estimate of how much they would be charging to complete the investigation. That's where the $19,000 came from. I did talk to the particular from our REDW this week, realizing that this was coming in front of the board. He said that the investigation was more extensive than he originally thought, that they had interviewed more people than he originally thought they would interview, and that the estimate that his associate gave us for an additional $19,000, bringing the total for this investigation to $55,000 was accurate to their expenses. So that's all I can tell you. I don't know more about the investigation. It has not gone through this office. It has gone through the attorney that the board is using. So any further information about why the overrun would have to come from him.
So is it in your opinion, Mr. Gibson, that they've already spent this, or that they are assuming that it's going to cost this much to complete?
So it is their estimate that this is what it will cost to complete. They did indicate to me that they have finished the draft of the report. They have presented it to the attorney that the board chose to lead this investigation or control this investigation. I haven't seen that report yet. I know, Mr. Smith, you and I have discussed the importance of Ms. Searmans and I seeing that report because it is a forensic audit or forensic investigation. So I would expect to see that soon before it gets, I want to look at it, and Ms. Searmans wants to look at it for accuracy, make sure there are not any mistakes. But if you're asking me, have they spent the hours that they're charging for, I do believe that's the case.
So do we know that they spent the money? I guess that's what my point is. Is this something that we're looking for to enable them to complete the investigation? Because what I would like to know is where we're at as of right now.
It is my understanding that the investigation itself is complete. Now, there will be expense in presenting it to the board, to you, and there will be expense in presenting it to the state auditor's office, which is required under the statute for a special audit. So the $19,000 includes an estimate of, that's a maximum and up to for all of those presentations.
Thank you, Mr. Gibson. So I guess to that, my point would be, is if we don't know that we have spent this money yet, I would like to get an accurate invoice to find out where we're at right now before we start talking about further money to see where we are in this investigation. So we don't have that information. So I would say that we wait until we get an accurate invoice as to where we're at.
Okay, so those invoices are going to your attorney. I received the first 2 invoices, which are accurate for money that has been spent, and those were almost $39,000. I have those in this office. I've asked for more detail because I want to know not just how many hours, but what those hours were spent doing. But I am not, as you know, Mr. Smith, I'm not charged with, nor do I have control over this. So I would suggest that if you want more detailed information, it probably needs to come from your attorney.
So let me ask Claire, would there be an issue if we and I'm making a recommendation, if we were to table this to find out what it is we actually owe instead of approving a dollar amount that we might not even spend.
Mr. Smith, members of the board, Mr. Gibson, the letter that you guys have on D5 is Michelle Romero has outlined. So there are actually two of the invoices that are attached. Mr. Gibson just mentioned that those two amounts detail the $38,000. Mr. Gibson and myself got on the phone with REDW to exactly do that, is get some more detail information. And what we were told was that would have to go through the attorney, since that's the way this contract has been set up.
So I could probably take care of that end of it, of getting that information. But what I don't want to do is approve this if it's money that we're not going to spend and that we don't have to approve, I guess is what my point is. Does that make sense? Am I saying that?
You do make sense. So at this point, you have bills for May and June,
Okay.
which total, Claire, help me with the number. I don't have it in front of me. 38,900 roughly.
Yes, yes. $38,826.
So that's money that's been spent.
Correct.
That
Okay.
we have a bill for.
Okay, so I would like to recommend that we table this issue until we find out what is the next step, what we're approving money for, where they want to go from here, and whether we even want to take that route.
Mr. President.
Mr. President.
Mr. Frank Otero. Sorry, Stephen Otero. Sorry.
I can make a motion. I'd like to make a motion that we go ahead and table this request until our CFO, Mr. Gibson, and our attorney give us a detailed written report prior to approval.
I will second that motion.
So I have a motion by Mr. Stephen Otero to table this issue until we get a detailed report to find out if we even need to approve this. And I have a second by Mr. David Vickers. Mr. Frank Otero.
Mr. President, members of the board, I also want to know how much our attorney is going to charge, because, you know, we're getting invoices, and if they want an extra 19,000, how much does he want? And I want that public, okay? I made a comment to him recently, and then he turned around and said I was threatening him, and you know, and I just want to make one thing clear, that I represent the public, and I've been doing that in a professional manner for over a decade, and I'm going to continue to do it in a professional manner. And this is an embarrassment to the board. Thank you.
In response to Mr. Otero, we do have up-to-date bills from that attorney. I can break that out for you in how much of his expenses have been charged in communication with and collaboration with REDW.
Thank you, Mr. Gibson. And I think we all represent the public. So that being said, I will stand for a motion on tabling item number 10C5, REDW for purchase order increase out of operational.
There's a motion in play right now.
Thank you. I have a motion by Mr. Stephen Otero and a second by David Vickers. David Vickers, how do you vote?
Yes.
Frank Otero, how do you vote?
Yes.
Stephen Otero, how do you vote?
As a representative of the community in the district, I vote yes.
Mr. Eloy Hidon, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Item 10C5 is tabled till we get more information. That brings us to item number 10E. Approval of resolution NMDOT for Las Lunas Schools Athletic Fields Pavement Rehabilitation Project located at Las Lunas High School. Mr. Stephen Otero.
Here again, just want to bring this out in the open. I have no problem with it. I think the district's doing a great job. They've been doing it for years to get matching funds for paving projects. We were given a report by our CPO through Mr. Gibson And that report is pretty detailed, and I appreciate that. The only thing I was bringing it up is just to let the people know and let everybody know that here again, this is for next year's paving project, as I've been informed, or me and Mr. Hidon were informed. And it's my understanding that Las Tunas, Valencia High School is going to get the paving project done this year, which hasn't been done yet. So it's just a matter of kind of putting it in perspective as to the timeline that we're doing this. So this is the only reason I brought it up. And I definitely support it 100%.
Thank you, Mr. Stephen Otero. I'll stand for a motion on item number 10E, the athletic fields pavement rehabilitation project.
So moved on 10E.
I have a motion by Mr. Stephen Otero. I'll stand for a second.
I'll second that.
Second.
A second by Mr. David Vickers. Mr. David Vickers, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Frank Otero, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Otero, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Eloy Hidon, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes. That brings us to item number 11, announcement of meetings. As allowed by the Open Meeting Act and District Open Meetings Resolution, on occasion, a quorum of board members attend the same function, including those held at school sites at the district level, as well as sports functions, conferences, workshops, and trainings. Board members will refrain from discussing and/or acting on board issues in those settings. In addition, only official meetings are published, and if other meetings are scheduled, they will be announced in accordance with the Open Meetings Act. I'd like to announce the following meetings. On July 23rd in the boardroom, there will be a special meeting that will be conducted via Zoom at 6 p.m. Did we make that at 6 p.m., Mr. Gibson? I thought we were having that at 5. 6 p.m. it is. On August 11th, in the conference room, Finance Committee meeting via Zoom at 4 p.m. August 18th in the boardroom, a regular board meeting via Zoom at 6 p.m. And on August 19th in the conference room, an audit committee meeting. The attendance is by invitation only at 9 a.m. That will also probably be via Zoom. That brings us to item number 12, closed executive session, discussion regarding pending or threatened litigation, specifically discussion with attorney regarding status of tort claim notice and threat of suit with social media dispute as permitted under sections 10-15-1H7 NMSA. Stand for a motion regarding item number 12.
Mr. President, I move we go into executive session.
A motion by Mr. Eloy Hidon to go to executive session. I'll stand for a second.
Second.
I have a second by Mr. Frank Otero. Mr. David Vickers, any comments first, board members?
Mr. Smith, members of the board, Mr. Smith, will you give me the full motion, please?
Absolutely. I have a motion by Mr. Eloy Hidon to proceed into executive session for discussion regarding pending or threatened litigation, specifically discussing with attorney regarding status of tort claim notice and threat of suit with social media dispute as permitted under section 10-15-H7 NMSA. I have a second by Mr. Frank Otero. Mr. David Vickers, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Frank Otero, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Otero, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Eloy Hidon, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes. The board is now in executive session at 6:32 p.m. Board members, will you please exit this meeting and open up the executive session?
Brian, do we need to stay on or can we
Sir, we are good to go, John said. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Ms. Wolf.
You're welcome.
So I'd like to stand for motion to go back into regular session.
So moved.
I have a motion by Mr. Vickers to go into regular session. I'll stand for a second.
I'll second that.
I have a second by Mr. Eloy Hidon. Mr. Vickers, how do you vote?
Yes.
Frank Otero, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Otero, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Eloy Hidon, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes. The board is now back in regular session at 8:28 p.m. The board went into closed executive session for discussion regarding pending or threatened litigation, specifically discussion with attorney regarding status of tort claim, notice, and threat of suit with social media dispute as permitted under section 10-15-1H7 NMSA. No other topics were discussed and no action was taken in closed executive session. That brings us to item number 13, adjournment for the meeting. I'll stand for a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
I have a motion by Mr. Vickers to adjourn the meeting. I'll stand for a second.
Second.
I have a second by Mr. Eloy Hidon. Mr. Vickers, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Frank Otero, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Stephen Otero, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Eloy Hidon, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I would like to thank everybody. Great job on putting the meeting together and getting everything squared away. You did a terrific job. Thank you to all the staff and Mr. Gibson and the board members. I vote yes as well. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night, Frank.